Today we're going to talk a little bit about forecast modeling, which is a different way to create and manage forecasts for your material demand. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the different ways that sales forecasting and forecast modeling provide so that users can create and maintain forecasts. One of the more popular ways is to come into a forecast entry screen where you can enter a forecast manually. Now ahead of time you're going to set up a version, so we can set up our standard version. We're going to pick the year that we're creating the forecast for. Let's say that we're in 2006. We're going to pick our product group that has been defined. We're going to look at that here in more detail. But basically the product group defines all the items that are available to me to forecast in this group. So I'm going to pick an item here. Let's go ahead and pick my gateway item. And you can see over here on the right, I can forecast by territory, by salesperson, by customer, and then I have this all others box. What this means is if I'm forecasting for 2006 for my gateway E5200 in the Rialto warehouse, I can make a forecast to a specific customer. Maybe I want to look up, I know we do a lot of sales with DOS and computer products. And then I can come down here and enter my forecast manually in the different months. Okay. The other thing I could have done was to check this all others checkbox. And what that allows me to do is, let's say that I want to enter this forecast for Dawson, but then I want to maintain a forecast for every other company that would potentially buy this product. I can maintain a separate forecast for Dawson, and then I can check this all others checkbox to group everybody else. Okay, so I can go ahead and just enter my forecast here manually, and you get the picture here. Now, a couple things. Number one, as you can see on the screen, the forecast entry screen is pretty difficult. It's okay if you're maintaining forecasts that are already in the system. But if you were starting from scratch and you had to enter a bunch of different forecasts, this probably isn't the best way to do it. Okay? So what most people do, I'm just going to go ahead and cancel this out, is they use our copy, import, export utility. So I can take, for example, a forecast or just create a template. I'm going to go ahead and proceed here and dump out my 2012 forecast. And this is going to create an Excel file for me, and anything that would be forecasted monthly would be displayed in the monthly tab. You can see I've got some weekly forecasts here, yearly, quarterly, because I can have different forecast groups that are part of this version. Okay, so what I would probably do here is use this utility to create a template. I could then delete my information here. I've got the items here. I can put the customers in. I can put the different forecasts into my spreadsheet. I can do all the calculations that I would expect that I can do within Excel. I would save this file, and then I would come back into this utility, and I would import it. And this is really nice because if I have a forecast from, let's say, 2013, I'm getting ready to prepare for 2014, I can export my 2013 forecast, make my changes to it in Excel, and then come back and import it back in for the next year. Okay. Pick my file. I'm going to create a results file, which is a validation telling me if there was any errors. Maybe I screwed up one of the product codes that weren't exported. Maybe I deleted something and it's not able to validate that record. And then I've got a bunch of different options here. A couple I want to point out real quick. One is the fact that you can add together. What this means is, let's say I start my 2014 forecast, and I get into February, and all of a sudden we land another major account, or we land a big deal with an existing account. I can create a separate forecast for that new customer or for that new order that might be significant, and what it'll do is when I import, it will add that in on top of what I already have in the system for the forecast. So as you can see, from a forecast creation standpoint, this is a very nice utility, especially for those companies that need more control over forecast creation. The problem with either the forecast entry screen or this process with copy, import, and export is that if I have lots of items and I have history in the system and history is indicative of future demand, then I really have no statistics to tell me what did I sell before, what products are trending up, what products are trending down, and are there seasonal patterns in the demand for these types of items. So that is why we developed forecast modeling. Okay, so we're going to take a look at forecast modeling. Well, forecast modeling is it's a couple things. Number one, it's the ability to have the system create the forecast for you based on sales history. Okay, and there's a couple other options with that. It all really starts with the setup. When I go into forecast modeling options, you can see that I can set some information. This is paths for information regarding our integration to Forecast Pro. Forecast Pro is the predominant statistical sales forecasting product on the market. We embed their engine within our solution so that you don't have to worry about exporting, importing information. What you simply do is you click on a model button and it's going to go out, call their application, dump down the data from the Sage 500 application, analyze that data, pick the right statistical model to apply to that data, and then return back into sales forecasting a statistically accurate forecast based on that data set. Okay? And we're going to look at that. Now, just a couple other settings here. You get to define what you want to call this set of data within the sales forecasting tool. Okay, so real simple setup there. The next thing you're going to want to probably do is go and maintain some forecast templates, and we're going to show how this is used. So there are cases where you don't have history for an item. Maybe it's a new product that you're introducing. So what I can do is I can set up a template to use to drive the forecast for this item, probably for at least 2 years, maybe 3 years, until I have enough sales history for the forecast modeling engine to be able to analyze some meaningful information to create the forecast. Okay, so I've created a template out here I called Winter. This happens to be a monthly template. You can set these up, monthly, daily, quarterly, weekly, yearly. You give them a name, and then you put in your quantities here. So as you can see, I've basically weighted these, and these don't have to be January, February, March. This is really just how you want to set it up, but it does make it easier. I'm putting a weight of 10 on January in this case, a weight of 9 on February. Now you could enter the forecast amounts in here that would be applied to any item using these templates. But what I like about setting them up more as a weighted average here is that when I go to attach this template to an item, I can mark it up by 1%. So if I know that period 1 in this template is 10 and I mark it up by 100%, I'm going to end up with 100 units in January. Okay? So just a couple things there on the forecast template setup. And then we're ready to go. And we've done all the other setup. And let's go and look at the forecast product groups. Now, for example, today I've created a group called Computer. For my Computer product group in my Rialto warehouse, I am forecasting by customer and by item. My forecast is going to be created monthly but smoothed weekly. Now what that means is I'm going to have 12 periods of forecast, right? 12 months for my forecast. But MRP, maybe in MRP we're planning weekly, or at least we want the option to plan weekly. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those monthly forecasts, which will allow us to get some variability by month for seasonal items. I can then smooth that demand down into weekly buckets that I would use to drive my MRP planning. And there's a lot of other stuff here. This is all covered in the sales forecasting videos that we have up on our YouTube site. But what I want to do here is I want to show you a couple things that are going to be of interest. Number one is for this 28.8 modem. If I right click, I can go and look at the properties. you can see that this particular item is forecasted manually. Okay, that means that we're either going to enter this forecast or we're going to have Forecast Pro create the forecast for us. I want to right click down here on my gateway item. So in this case, this particular item, this Gateway E5200, has been replaced by the Gateway E5250. So this item will not be sold any longer, but the demand history from this item will be used to calculate the Gateway E5250 demand. So let's look at that Gateway E5250 item. In this case, we've defined that it does in fact replace the E5200 and that it's going to inherit the sales history from the item it's replacing. Okay, so when Forecast Modeling, Forecast Pro engine analyzes the data, it's going to look at the sales history for this older item to use to drive the forecast for this newer item. Okay. I've also got this item in here. It's an NEC 17, and I'm going to go ahead and look at the properties for that. In this case, we are going to be generating this forecast either manually or through the forecast modeling process. I've also got an HP19 in here, and the same thing with the HP19. We're going to be driving the forecast from manual or Forecast Pro. And then lastly, I want to show you this SCSI bus item. This is a new item that we've introduced. We're introducing it in period 1 of 2005. And what we're going to do is we're going to create the initial forecast from a template. And that template's defined here as the winter template. We're going to start in period 1. Obviously, if I'm rolling this out at different times of the year, I can start at different periods. So maybe I can start with where I really have the forecast template set up for maybe June, if it's a seasonal item. And then I'm going to say, when do I want the system to start using history and modeling and the Forecast Pro statistical engine to start generating statistical forecasts. So in this case, I'm going to go really 2 years forward. And once you get 2 years of history, this is a good amount of data for most items so that a statistical system like Forecast Pro can analyze the data and give you meaningful information. And since that template I used was only set up for 1 year for 12 periods, I'm going to loop that template annually. And you can see here I've marked that template up by 100%, right? So I had that set up as 10, 9, and different smaller numbers. I probably am not going to do that, but what it does is it allows me to set up a general or generic template that I can mark up and reuse over and over for different types of items just by adjusting that percentage. So those are the options on how we can control how forecast modeling will create the forecast for you. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm either going to come in and create my forecast, or I can skip that step and go ahead and model my forecast. Okay. Yep, we'll go ahead and save that. We're going to pick our version, being standard, and our year, and we're using some old data, so we're going to go back to 2005. I want the system to create missing forecasts. I want it to immediately set the forecast to what the modeling system has generated. Okay. Let's go ahead here and generate. Let's actually start with the SCSI bus, because I want to show you the template. This was the item that we had set up by template. And we're going to create this forecast. Let's say that this item, we don't know who we're going to sell it to. We're just going to create this for unspecified, meaning for all customers. Okay. So let's go ahead and generate that. We're going to click to proceed. What this is going to do, it's going to create the forecast for us, and it's then going to build the forecast. Okay, there was no history, which is fine. So let's go in here, forecast entry, and see what happened. Pick our computers, pick our SCSI bus, and do all others. So as you can see, I now have a forecast that was created by doubling that template that I had created. You know, I was marking it up 100%. I had 10 in that first period, so I ended up with 20 here. I ended up with 18, that's a double of a 9, 16, which is double of an 8 in that third period. So you can see how you can set these templates up, and you can have the system create your forecast for you based on those templates. Okay, and if you ever wanted to, you could look at those item parameters right from the screen to find out what template it is using. Alright, so that's example number 1. Now let's go back and let's go ahead and create the forecast for my gateway items. And actually, I just need to do my gateway E5250 because the other one has been discontinued. And let's say I want to create a forecast for all customers and Dawson Computer at the same time. So we're going to go ahead here and create those. It's going to create 2 new forecasts, one for unspecified, one for Dawson. It's going to run in the background now. Forecast Pro is running in the background. Now let's go take a look at what happened there. So we've got our computers. We've got our gateway 5250. And I'm going to pick, let's see here, where are you at, Dawson? And I had some data in here from before. But there is my statistical forecast that Forecast Pro had created for this item using the sales history of the Gateway E5200. Okay, and you can see that it automatically set that to my forecast. Now, if I want to make adjustments to this, I can do that. But if I do rerun Forecast Pro or forecast modeling against this, it will overwrite this information. So the forecast modeling is really nice if you want to use it to create the forecast based on statistics. But maybe you know you're going to have a promotion in July. You're doing a big trade show and you expect to sell 1,000 units. You can override that here. The other thing that we may want to do is we may want to look at Forecast Pro. So let's go ahead and pull that up. And we can actually see the results of this within their tool. And there's a lot of things that you can do from an analysis standpoint within Forecast Pro. So you can see within unspecified, this Gateway E5250, it ran through what they call their expert analysis, and it's using either exponential smoothing or Box-Jenkins. It ruled out some of the information in the data set, and it came back and said that it's going to use exponential smoothing, which it did to create this forecast. And that was for all customers. Let's take a look at Dawson Computers. With Dawson Computers, it recognized that this data set was different. Because for this particular customer, based on their sales history, their model is best met by the Croston's intermittent demand model. So it's using a different forecasting algorithm to generate the forecast, whether it's all customers or Dawson specifically. Okay, and that's important. Let's go ahead and minimize that. We'll go back to our forecast product groups. And in this case, the last example I want to show you, we showed you the template, we showed you replacements. Let's go ahead and just generate these others. And in this case, I want to create forecasts for maybe a lot of different customers. Maybe I've got Aldebaran, Alicia Garage Doors, Blackwell, Campbell Electric, Computer Solutions. You know, I can pick and control how I'm creating these forecasts and sending them through to the modeling system. So now I'm going to go ahead and click Proceed. Nope, it's locked. So let me cancel out of there so I can run this. It's going to create 21 forecasts, which makes my job so much easier, right? I mean, see how many forecasts I'm creating at the same time. I'm using my sales history from Sage 500 to generate these statistically accurate forecasts. And now I can go in and I can review this information. So the HP19, I didn't have a forecast previously. And I can go ahead and look at Aldebaran, and there is Aldebaran's forecast created from this forecast model. Okay. You're noticing that a lot of these items here have relatively flat or smoothed numbers. You're not seeing a lot of seasonal patterns. So here's an example with my Gateway E5250 for all customers, where I have a forecast that was created from Forecast Pro that doesn't have just the exponential smoothing where it's smoothing out the quantities across the different periods, but it actually has adjusted the quantities based on the data that we sent over. It was able to have enough history to be able to predict what do I plan to sell in these different periods. And what's nice about this is you can compare these statistical models against your actual sales history here in the grid below. So that's really the engine around forecast modeling. There are some other things that are available. You probably noticed, if I go back to my forecast product groups, that we have the ability for you to define a reference price and a reference cost. You can use that in some of your analysis and reporting. This is also part of the forecast modeling piece, where if you want to do some rough cut kind of cash expectations or cash flow analysis based on your forecast, this would be the way that you would do it. We also give you some analysis tools, being able to look at your actual versus forecasted amounts monthly or weekly. We do have a report that can show you this as well, forecast versus actual, as well as an inquiry. So lots of information just beyond, embedding this statistical forecasting engine called Forecast Pro. We've got the templates, we've got the replacement items. These are all better ways to manage a forecast. And that's it. You can create your forecast manually. You can create them from an import. You can create them from Forecast Pro. You can create them from a template, or you could create them from a replacement item and the sales history that item had.